a fantasy author offering some reading recs and writing tips, an indie author with an incredible creative streak. I hope your Valentine's Day was a romantically ripping success, because it's time for another episode of The Right Way. Hey, welcome back to The Right Way, where we talk book recommendations, author interviews, and creative writing tips. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and click the bell for notifications on new videos just like this one. I'm your host, Garrett K. Jones, and I want you to know that this is the 4th episode of 2025, and I'm excited to share the content that I have lined up for you. But here are just a couple of announcements to get the ball rolling. First and foremost, this coming Monday, February 17th, is the release day for my newest book, Midnight Playground, a collected anthology of original short stories. I'm excited to bring this title to you because while there are some fantasy shorts in the collection, much of what's in this book is different from my usual fare, and I'm looking forward to seeing how well it does. Now, if you'd like to get your copy, the pre-order for the Kindle edition is still live until Monday morning, when it and the paperback are released simultaneously. There will be an audiobook edition that is currently in the works, but that project isn't completed yet. But I will have more info once it is. Secondly, if you haven't been keeping up to date, all month long I've got a special promotion taking place in my store on Square in honor of the heirs of Menenias turning a decade. If you use the code ANNIVERSARY at checkout, you'll get 10% off your purchase of one or more signed copies of my books when you buy them directly from me. You can also get your hands on this delightfully fragrant candle themed to the book. The candles are yellow in color and are scented with sandalwood. Thirdly, back in late January, I launched the 6th season of my Storytellers podcast. So check out this promo for the new season. Being a storyteller is about growth and change. Moving away from what's stagnant towards something fresh and alive and thriving. And while that growth and change takes many forms, one of the most profound is the spiritual direction one's life can take. For me, I'm a Christian, and with that comes a responsibility to tell my story, to share my testimony. I invite you to join me for Storytellers Season 6 as we discuss why and how faith matters. Lastly, we are just a month and a half from the spring preview, and that means we are rapidly approaching Author Awareness April and the marathon of interviews I've put together for this season. The date of the spring preview is the last Saturday in March, so be prepared for something awesome. So this month we are getting a proper double dose of the author guest host that I've invited to the show. Paul D. Smith is a fantasy writer much like myself. He's developed a great series of books called Jason and the Draconauts. I featured him in an interview back during my very first season, and I'm enthusiastic to see what books he has provided for you today.
Hello, my name is Paul Smith. I'm the author of the Jason and the Draconauts series, as well as the 5th adventure series of modules for Dungeons & Dragons. However, today I'm here to talk to you about my 10 recommendations for reading and or audio listening material for 2005. So let's start with number 10. Number 10 is a graphic novel, or in this case it's been broken up into 2. So this is the Green Lantern Sinestro Corps War graphic novels. They split the story up into 2 novels, as you can see here. And the reason I really enjoyed this was, well, first of all, I am a fan of the superhero Green Lantern. But second, the Sinestro Corps War was such an amazing story from the point of view of it really captured the essence of what the character Green Lantern is about. Number 9 is going to be a title that's familiar to most of us. However, many of us really only know this story through the movies, but I would like to introduce us to the OG Jurassic Park novel by Michael Crichton. So I was a teenager when this actually came out in print form, and oh my gosh, did this open my eyes to what fiction can do when weaving it in with real life science. But oh, what a great story. It was so original for the time that it came out. The movie's great. Special effects are wonderful. The John Williams score is amazing. However, if you really want the full Jurassic Park experience, go to the OG, the novel, and I wouldn't even say go to the sequel, which was The Lost World. Not as good of a story, but Jurassic Park, the original, was amazing, so highly recommend that. So number 8 may come as a little bit of surprise to some of you readers out there because it's gotten some criticism that this story wasn't particularly well written, but I'm going to hold up Ready Player One. Now, this is the movie cover. The original cover looked a lot different than this by Ernest Cline. So Ready Player One, I didn't find out about until not too long ago. But it hit on all the nostalgia markers for me. Just such a great story. I would recommend it for a little bit of light reading, as a matter of fact. So number 7 on my list, I actually don't have something to hold up for you because it's an audiobook. I highly recommend the audio version of World War Z. This might not be something that's at the top of people's list, especially after the movie that came out that wasn't that good. But if you listen to the fully dramatized audio version of World War Z, you are in for a treat because the producers have brought in so many different voice actors and some really high-name voice actors, high-profile folks, that this sounds like you are listening to like a Ken Burns documentary of how the zombie apocalypse broke out. Number 6 is another graphic novel, and this graphic novel was adapted into a movie back last decade, but this might be familiar to a lot of you. It's Captain America, the Winter Soldier, but really a great character dive, not only into Bucky and what happened to him, but into Captain America, Steve Rogers himself. So highly recommend Captain America, the Winter Soldier. So number 5 on my list is the one item of nonfiction that I wanted to share with you all. So, but it's a book by Max Lucado called 6 Hours, One Friday. And some things from this book, even only having read it once. So he's got 3 main themes in this book. The themes are, my life isn't futile, my failures aren't fatal, and my death isn't final. Even when I was at a dark place, those 3 mantras, especially the first 2, just kept repeating in my head. 4 is, this is The Hobbit. I'm sure you all are familiar with The Hobbit and with Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series. The reason I chose The Hobbit, because when little Paul was really first starting to read, The Hobbit was one of the first books I picked up, getting into longer form fiction, especially fantasy. And it was really that gateway into not only just the world of Tolkien, but to the gateway of fantasy genre itself. Book number 3, again, is representative of a series. And the Harry Potter series had such an effect on both myself as a reader and as a writer. Harry Potter is, I feel like it should be on any recommendation list for people that are kind of getting into reading fantasy as a whole, looking for works for young people. So number 2 is a graphic novel, Batman the Long Halloween. Let me turn that cover so you can see it a little bit better. So in my opinion, this is one of the seminal Batman stories that's out there. It's a murder mystery at its heart, but it also is a character study, not just into Batman, but in the main villain, who I'm not going to spoil because that's part of the story. Highly recommend Batman the Long Halloween. And so finally, it's another novel series about a wizard named Harry, but it's not Harry Potter, This is Jim Butcher's novel series called the Dresden Files. And what I'm holding up here, hopefully you can see it, is one of the ones that I highly recommend. Now, this is farther along in the series. It's called Skin Game. But the Dresden Files series, which I think at the time it has around 17 or 18 books to it, so it's been around for a long time. Um, it is contemporary fantasy, and it is about a detective in Chicago who also happens to be a wizard. It really is an excellent work of storytelling, of character building. The reason I held up the book Skin Game, which is around book 12 or 13, is this is one of the audiobooks that I've gone back to and listened to multiple times. So that is the end of my 10 recommendations. I hope you really appreciate it and maybe take some time to read something new. Again, my name is Paul Smith. My series, Jason and the Draconauts, is available on Amazon, as well as the first two 5th Adventures modules for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So thank you for your time. Happy reading, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.
I'll have more from Paul for Creator's Corner in just a bit. But if you're interested in picking up any of the titles he's recommended, you'll find those books and their ISBN numbers listed down in the video description. So I connected with this month's interviewee through Instagram. I was looking for guests and this writer popped up on my radar thanks to some shared connections. So please join me in welcoming Dante Hawkins. All right, Dante, thank you for joining me on the show. It's great to have you. Tell me about your work and what you write.
Thank you for having me. Basically, I write a whole bunch of different things. I love boxing. I love superheroes. I love fiction in general. So that's mainly what I focus on when I write, and along with horror.
So now the books that you've been putting out, the newest one, you said it's called Redemption, correct? Tell me a little bit about that book.
It takes a little inspiration from like the Rocky series of movies, like Rocky and Creed. It takes a little inspiration from my personal life as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also connected to my very first book, of Links of Fame, but not fully. It's a boxing story, and it's about a kid named Bosco who wants to change the way his life is, exactly. Like, he's been in lots of trouble, lots of fights, bullied a lot. So he gives boxing a shot, and it changes his life.
Is there any particular experience that you felt that you went through that has fueled the story on this book?
Yes, because I used to get into lots of fights when I was younger, which I'm not too proud of, but can't do nothing about that. And boxing was almost a pathway for me, but I ended up doing writing instead.
Yeah, you found two outlets to work through that. That's pretty cool. How'd you get into writing? Was this something that had always been on your mind, or like after a certain point you just decided you wanted to write a book?
I've actually been writing since I was 6. I saw my cousin writing a story, and I told her, I was like, "Hey, you should put a baby," and you should put a baby in it. It was a horror story, and she basically told me no and get out of my face. So I tried it myself, and I just ended up falling in love with writing, and yeah.
What has been one of the biggest challenges or the hardest parts that you've encountered in writing your books?
Mostly right now, since I finished Redemption, it's just been trying to focus on a series that, like, either create a new series and just ride that train until it's done, or continue one of the books I have out now. It's mostly like how fast I write. That's usually a challenge because I'll like struggle with pacing, and I'll write way too slow. And not saying writing slow is a bad thing, but like it bothers me in a way, like me personally, because I want to get out so many of these ideas and I just can't.
If you were to give any advice to other authors, trying to hone their craft and to try and break through whatever barriers or walls that they're hitting, what advice would you give to them?
I would say pace yourself and don't rush. That's the thing I struggle with. I will also say plan out your ideas fully, and if something new pops in, make sure you take it down, like write it down pretty fast, because I know I'm quick to forget something.
Dante, how can people get connected with you, and how can they get copies of your books?
I have links in my Instagram bio. It's Kaze Official. And my books are also on Amazon. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Most of the books are paperback, but Redemption that is also Kindle is also available on Apple Books as well.
Well, Dante, it has been an absolute pleasure to learn more about your books and your writing, and it was great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. A big thank you to Dante for being this month's Author Awareness interviewee. If you'd like to connect with him or get copies of his work, you can find those links down in the video description. So like I said, this month you get a double dose of Mr. Smith. He's providing you with some informative creative writing tips. I hope his advice gives you the boost that you're looking for.
But today I'm here to talk to you about my author recommendations. So these are recommendations for people who are getting into writing or maybe been writing for a little while. Even there might be something special in there for those of you who are going to independently publish. My first recommendation for anybody that is writing right now, interested in getting in writing, is to start and finish something. Now, it seems like an obvious recommendation, but a lot of authors that have approached me over the years have said, hey, I started this story or I started that story, but I never really finished it. And they have accumulated a library of stories that they've never finished, but have somehow gotten launched. So my recommendation is start and finish something. Now, I think people get confused when they hear that, meaning, oh, I got to start and finish a book. Absolutely not. When I say start and finish something, it can be something very short. So use perhaps a writing prompt. So my second recommendation seems like an obvious one, but I think it's something we really need to remind ourselves of, is write to your strengths. If you are an epic dark fantasy writer, please don't let your first works try to be something that you're not familiar with at all. For me, it would be the romance genre. I don't even know how people do that. I wouldn't even try to write something that's readable to the public in that genre. So write to your strengths. If you know sci-fi, if you know fantasy, if you know detective, write stories in those genres. It'll be easier for you. The people that are going to read them are going to enjoy them more because they know that you can write well in that area. So write to your strengths. Don't try to immediately start branching out into something that you really are unfamiliar with. So number 3 is feed your creativity. So for me, I enjoy sci-fi and fantasy. So I might take some time, and I mean larger portions of time, away from that story and maybe read another sci-fi or fantasy book or watch some movies or start a new series in that genre. But it just feeds that creativity. It feeds your ideas. It gets your brain flowing in that genre again. Now, what I would caution you against is just trying to copy something that you've seen in another genre, because that's pretty transparent to your readers that you're just copying, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, or you're just copying Star Trek. However, those kinds of things can get those juices flowing, so to speak. So if you're stuck, feed your creativity and don't just take like a day or a half a day. Really take some time away, kind of replenish those batteries of ideas before you jump back into writing. Number 4 is surgically remove your ego. You need to put yourself in the mindset that any feedback you get, good, bad, indifferent, is good feedback. You might get excoriated. You might get ripped a new one for something that you've written. But take a deep breath, take a step back and say, okay, what is this person trying to say? take the emotion out of it. Sometimes I think bad reviewers are doing that to feed their own ego as opposed to giving genuine feedback. But take a step back, say, what is this person trying to say? So finally, number 5, and this is one of the great writing debates that is out there, but my number 5 is to organize. The big writing debate that comes up when I bring up this topic of organizing your writing is, are you a plotter or are you a pantser? Meaning, do you take some time to organize your story, to plot it out ahead of time? Or are you a type of person that writes by the seat of your pants, that sits down and just starts writing and lets kind of almost like a free form, letting the story guide you as the author as to where it goes next? And both of those points of view have a lot of merit. Some might think, oh, of course we're going to organize. Some of the really great authors that are out there right now still producing work are pantsers. They just kind of sit, and it's a more stream of consciousness type of writing. So what do I mean by organizing? Well, that can take a lot of different forms. Some people just have a notebook and they use kind of like the outline format that you learned in grade school and just write out their book. For me, I use a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. So in one column, I have a chapter number, and the next column, I have just a very basic summary of what happens in that chapter. But it just gives me notes so that basically before I even start writing the novel, I kind of have a rough sketch of what it's going to look like from start to finish. So I hope those writing recommendations, those writing tips work for you. Happy writing, and would love to see something that people write in the future. So thank you.
A big thank you to Paul for being this month's Top 10s and Creators Corner guest host. Now, if you'd like to connect with Paul and check out his work, you can find those links to all his socials, his website, and his books down in the video description. Hey, thanks for watching. If you haven't done so by this point in the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications on new videos just like this one. If you're interested in being a channel supporter, you can find links to Patreon and the merch store on Teespring, or if you'd like to make a one-time donation, you can find my link for Cash App. Make sure to tune in on March 8th for the March live stream. I will be broadcasting another new writing workshop from the Hanford branch of the Kings County Library. I'll see you then.